My stepfather made my mom disown me at 18. 3 years later, she begged me to pay for his cancer treatment and my stepsister's tuition. I refused. I still remember the day my mother met him. I was 12, sitting at our small kitchen table doing homework while she bustled around making dinner. Just the two of us, the way it had always been. The phone rang, and I watched her face light up in a way I hadn't seen before. She twirled the cord around her finger, laughing softly at whatever the person on the other end was saying. "Mom's got a date," she announced after hanging up, a hint of color in her cheeks. "What do you think about that?" I shrugged, unsure how to respond. My father had left when I was just a baby, and for as long as I could remember, it had been me and my mom against the world. She worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. Sometimes I'd catch her staring at bills, worry lines creasing her forehead, but she always managed. Always made it work. "Is he nice?" I asked, the only question that seemed to matter. "I think so," she said, kissing the top of my head. "His name is Robert. You'll meet him soon." 2 years later, Robert moved in. He brought with him his daughter, Chloe, who was a year younger than me. At first, things weren't so bad. Robert was polite, if somewhat distant. He bought me a new backpack for school and took us all out to dinner sometimes. Mom seemed happy, and that was enough for me. But looking back, the warning signs were there from the beginning. The way his smile never quite reached his eyes when he looked at me. How he'd interrupt when I was telling Mom about my day. Small corrections about my posture, my grades, my friends. "He just wants what's best for you," Mom would say when I complained. "He's trying to be a father figure." But it wasn't about being a father figure. It was about control. And gradually, insidiously, he took control of everything. It started with the house rules. Suddenly, I had a strict curfew while Chloe could stay out later. I had to ask permission to go to the mall with friends, while Chloe just announced her plans. I was expected to help with chores, while Chloe's only responsibility was focusing on school. Chloe's younger, Robert would explain when I pointed out the unfairness. And she's always been an excellent student. "When you bring home grades like hers, we can talk about more privileges." The truth was, my grades were fine. Not perfect, but solid B's with a few A's. But in Robert's eyes, I was never good enough. Nothing I did was ever good enough. Worse than the double standards was watching how my mother changed. The woman who had once fiercely defended me against anyone now sat silently while Robert criticized me at dinner. The woman who used to help me with homework now told me to figure it out yourself because Robert thought I needed to be more independent. By the time I turned 16, our home had become a battlefield, with Robert and me constantly at odds, my mother caught in the middle, and Chloe smugly watching from the sidelines. "You're just jealous because my dad's successful and yours couldn't even be bothered to stick around," Chloe told me once, when we were alone. I wanted to hate her for it, but I couldn't entirely blame her. She was just parroting what she'd overheard from her father. The summer before my senior year of high school, things got worse. Robert lost his temper over something trivial. I think I left a light on in the bathroom, and went on a tirade about how disrespectful and ungrateful I was. How my mother had sacrificed everything for me, and this was how I repaid her. How I was a financial drain on their relationship. "Robert, that's enough," my mother finally said, but her voice was weak, uncertain. "No, it's not," he snapped. "You've been coddling him for too long. That's why he acts like this." That night, I heard them arguing in their bedroom. I couldn't make out all the words, but I caught phrases like "my house," "my rules," and "if you can't control your son." The next morning, my mother wouldn't look me in the eye at breakfast. My 18th birthday fell on a Tuesday. I came home from school expecting at least a small celebration, a cake, maybe, or a card. Instead, I found my mother and Robert sitting at the kitchen table, waiting for me. There was no cake, no card, just 2 stern faces and a heavy silence. "Sit down," Robert said. "We need to talk." I sat, a knot forming in my stomach. "Now that you're 18, my mother began, her voice oddly rehearsed, "it's time for you to start taking responsibility for yourself." "Okay," I said slowly, uncertain where this was going. I was thinking about getting a part-time job anyway. "You don't understand," Robert interrupted. "She means it's time for you to move out." I stared at them, waiting for the punchline, the just kidding that never came. "Mom?" I finally managed. She wouldn't look at me. "Robert and I have discussed it, and we think it's for the best. You and he are always at each other's throats. It's disrupting the household. And frankly, with Chloe starting college next year, we need to focus our resources." "You're kicking me out?" I could hardly believe what I was hearing. "Because of him? Because of her?" "This isn't about Chloe," Robert said sharply. "This is about you being an adult now. Adults don't live off their parents. Adults take care of themselves." "I'm still in high school," I argued, my voice rising with panic. "I don't have a job. Where am I supposed to go?" "You have 2 weeks to figure it out," Robert said, standing up as if the conversation was over. "Consider it your first lesson in adulthood." I looked to my mother, waiting for her to stand up for me, to tell Robert he was being ridiculous. But she just sat there, eyes downcast, silent. "Mom?" I pleaded. "You can't be serious." "I'm sorry," she whispered, finally meeting my gaze. "But Robert's right. It's time." I don't remember much about the next 2 weeks. I was in a fog of disbelief and betrayal. I asked friends if I could crash on their couches. I looked for jobs that would hire a high school student with no experience. I tried to reason with my mother when Robert wasn't around, but she had made her choice, and it wasn't me. On the day I left, Chloe watched from the doorway of her room, a smirk playing on her lips. Robert stood with his arm around my mother's shoulders, a gesture that seemed more possessive than comforting. "Good luck out there," he said, not bothering to hide his satisfaction. My mother hugged me briefly, mechanically. "Call if you need anything," she said, but we both knew it was an empty offer. I took one last look at the house that had been my home, at the woman who had been my whole world, and I walked away with nothing but a duffel bag of clothes and a backpack of essentials. The next few months were the hardest of my life. I couch surfed until I wore out my welcome, then spent a few nights in my car before finding a shelter that had space. I got a job at a fast food restaurant, working every shift I could while still attending school. Some nights, I was so exhausted I fell asleep in the library, using my backpack as a pillow. But I graduated. And somehow, against all odds, I survived. I moved up from fast food to retail, then from retail to an entry-level office position. I took night classes at the local community college. I saved every penny I could, living in a tiny studio apartment with second-hand furniture and eating ramen more often than not. But I was making it on my own. Now comment update to tag you on part 2. Update. My stepfather made my mom disown me at 18. 3 years later, she begged me to pay for his cancer treatment and my stepsister's tuition. I refused. Part 2. My mother called exactly once during those 3 years. It was Christmas, about 6 months after I'd left. The conversation was strained, superficial. She asked how I was doing, and I lied, saying everything was fine. She didn't invite me home. I didn't ask to come. We hung up after less than 5 minutes, and that was it. 3 years of silence. Until the day my phone rang, and her name appeared on the screen. "Hello?" I answered, my heart pounding. "Oh, thank God you picked up," she said, her voice thick with tears. "I didn't know if you would." "What's wrong?" I asked, because something clearly was. My mother didn't cry easily. "It's Robert," she said. "He has cancer. Pancreatic. It's not good." I waited, unsure what to say. I felt nothing, no sadness, no concern, not even satisfaction. Just emptiness. "The treatments are so expensive," she continued. "And with Chloe starting college in the fall, I don't know how we're going to manage." And there it was. The real reason for the call. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice flat. I hoped. "You might be able to help us," she said hesitantly. "I know things haven't been easy between us, but we're still family. And I know you've been doing well for yourself." "How would you know that?" I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "You haven't spoken to me in 3 years. "I've kept tabs," she admitted. "Through friends. I know you got that job at the insurance company. I know you're taking classes. I'm proud of you." Her words should have meant something, once upon a time. But now they just felt hollow. "Let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You're calling me after 3 years of silence to ask me to help pay for cancer treatment for the man who kicked me out of my home? And college tuition for the girl who watched it happen with a smile on her face? He's dying," she whispered. "Please. We need you." I laughed then, a harsh sound that surprised even me. "You need me? That's rich. Where were you when I needed you? Where were you when I was sleeping in my car? Or when I had to drop out of college because I couldn't afford both rent and tuition? Where were you on every birthday, every holiday, every night I cried myself to sleep wondering what I did to make my own mother throw me away? I made a mistake," she sobbed. "I know that now. Robert. He convinced me it was the right thing. That you needed to learn independence. I was wrong to listen to him. I see that now. Now that you need something from me," I said flatly. "Now that he can't provide anymore. Now I'm suddenly your son again? Please," she begged. "If not for him, then for me. For your sister." "She's not my sister," I said coldly. "And as far as I'm concerned, you're not my mother. Not anymore. You made your choice 3 years ago, and now I'm making mine." "No. You can't mean that," she gasped. "We're family." "Family doesn't do what you did to me," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. "Family doesn't throw someone away and then come crawling back only when they need money. That's not family. That's using someone. How can you be so heartless?" She cried. "He's dying. And that's supposed to erase everything he did? Everything you allowed him to do? I'm sorry he's sick. I truly am. But his problems are not my responsibility. What about Chloe?" She pressed. "She's innocent in all this." I thought about Chloe's smirk as I walked out the door, about all the time she had gloated over Robert's preferential treatment. Is she? Was she innocent when she watched me get kicked out? When she enjoyed all the benefits of being the real child while I was treated like an unwanted guest? "No, Mom. Chloe made her choices too." "I can't believe you're being like this," she said, her tone shifting from pleading to accusatory. "After everything I sacrificed for you growing up. And look how quickly you threw those sacrifices away the moment Robert told you to," I shot back. "I'm done with this conversation. Don't call me again." I hung up before she could respond, my hand shaking with anger. For days after, I waited for the guilt to hit me. For the second thoughts, the nagging feeling that I should have been the bigger person. They never came. Instead, I felt lighter, as if I'd finally put down a burden I'd been carrying for years. A month later, I came home to find an official-looking envelope in my mailbox. Court summons. My mother was suing me for financial support under our state's filial responsibility laws. According to the lawsuit, because I was her child and financially stable, I had a legal obligation to help support her and her dependents, including Robert and Chloe. She claimed that Robert had acted as a father figure in my life, that they had provided for me during my formative years, and that I now owed them support in their time of need. I laughed until I cried, then called a lawyer. Update 1. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, more claustrophobic. I sat with my lawyer, trying not to look across the aisle where my mother sat with Robert, gaunt now, visibly ill, and Chloe, who glared daggers at me throughout the proceedings. My lawyer, Sandra, was ruthlessly efficient. She had prepared a meticulous case demonstrating that I did not meet the criteria for filial responsibility in our state. Your Honor, she began, the law is quite clear. Filial responsibility statutes do not apply in cases where the parent abandoned the child, where the child is financially independent, or where the parent's financial hardship is the result of their own choices. My client's case meets all three of these exemptions. She presented documentation showing that I had been forced out of my home at 18, still a high school student. Testimonies from friends who had given me couches to sleep on. Employment records showing I had supported myself entirely since then, without a penny of help from my mother or stepfather. Furthermore, Sandra continued, the plaintiff is attempting to extend filial responsibility not just to herself, but to her husband, who is not my client's biological or adoptive father and has no legal relationship to him, and to her stepdaughter, who is even less of a claim. This is a clear overreach of the statute's intent. My mother's lawyer argued that I had not been abandoned but rather encouraged toward independence. That Robert had provided a home for me for 4 years, making him a de facto parent. That my mother's financial troubles were due to medical necessity, not poor choices. But the judge wasn't buying it. Mrs. Henderson, he said, using my mother's married name, did you or did you not have any contact with your son between his departure from your home and your recent request for financial assistance? My mother shifted uncomfortably. We spoke once or twice. Once, I corrected from my seat. For less than 5 minutes. On Christmas, 3 years ago. The judge raised an eyebrow. And during this time, did you provide any financial support, housing, healthcare, or other assistance to your son? No, but, and was your son a legal adult when he left your home? Yes, technically, but, no further questions, the judge cut her off. He turned to me next. Young man, did your stepfather legally adopt you at any point? No, Your Honor. And did you maintain any relationship with him after leaving the household? No, Your Honor. He nodded, jotting something down. I've heard enough. Now comment update to tag you on part 3. Update. My stepfather made my mom disown me at 18. 3 years later, she begged me to pay for his cancer treatment and my stepsister's tuition. I refused. Final part. This case is dismissed. Mrs. Henderson, the court finds that your son has no legal obligation to provide financial support to you, your husband, or your daughter under the filial responsibility statutes of this state. The gavel came down with a sound of finality that echoed in my chest. As we stood to leave, my mother rushed toward me, tears streaming down her face. How could you do this to us? After everything we did for you? Sandra moved to intervene, but I shook my head slightly. I needed to say this. You did nothing for me, I said quietly, calmly. You chose him over me. You threw me away when I needed you most. And now you want to pretend none of that happened because you need something from me? That's not how it works. He's dying, she hissed, gesturing to Robert, who sat slumped in his chair, too weak to join the confrontation. Have you no heart? I looked at the man who had systematically worked to push me out of my mother's life, who had treated me as a burden, an inconvenience, an obstacle to his perfect family. I felt no joy at his suffering, but no sorrow either. I'm sorry he's sick, I said honestly. But that doesn't erase what he did. What you did. Chloe stepped forward then, her face contorted with anger. You selfish asshole. You could help. But you won't. How do you live with yourself? I met her gaze steadily. The same way you lived with yourself when you watched your father push me out of my own home. The same way you lived with yourself when you enjoyed all the benefits of being the favorite while I was treated like garbage. We make our choices, Chloe. All of us. And we live with the consequences. I turned to leave, but my mother grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in with desperate strength. Please, she whispered. If not for him, then for me. I'm still your mother. For a moment, looking into her familiar eyes, I wavered. This was the woman who had once been my everything, who had worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over my head, who had taught me to read and tie my shoes and ride a bike. But then I remembered her silence as Robert told me to leave, the years of emptiness that followed, the fact that she had sued me rather than accept my answer. No, I said, gently removing her hand from my arm. You gave up that right. Good luck with everything, but don't contact me again. I walked out of that courtroom feeling lighter than I had in years. Not happy, exactly, but free. Free from the last lingering sense of obligation, the last thread of misplaced guilt. Update 2. I received a letter today, forwarded by Sandra. My mother has persistent, if nothing else. The letter was handwritten, the paper tear-stained in places. Robert passed away last week. The funeral is on Saturday. I know you probably won't come, but I wanted you to know. Chloe had to drop out of college. We lost the house. I'm working at a department store now, trying to pay off the medical bills. I don't expect your help anymore, but I thought you should know what happened to your family. I was wrong. So wrong. I see that now, too late. If you ever find it in your heart to forgive me, my door is always open. What's left of it, anyway? Love, Mom. I read the letter 3 times, searching for my feelings. Grief for a man I had once almost considered a father? Relief that he was gone? Satisfaction that karma had finally come for them all? I found none of these. Just a dull ache for what might have been, for the family we could have been if Robert had been a different man, if my mother had been stronger, if I had somehow been enough. I didn't go to the funeral. I didn't respond to the letter. But I did something that surprised even me. I arranged for a modest flower arrangement to be sent. No note, no name. Just flowers, because despite everything, there had been a time when this woman was my whole world. It was the closest thing to forgiveness I could manage. Update 3. Life has a strange way of bringing things full circle. I was promoted at work, moved to a better apartment, even started dating someone who makes me happier than I thought possible. I've built a life for myself, one step at a time, brick by brick. Last week, I ran into Chloe at a coffee shop. I almost didn't recognize her. Gone was the pretty, pampered girl with a smug smile. In her place was a tired young woman in waitress uniform, dark circles under her eyes. She saw me before I could leave. We stared at each other for a long moment, years of history hanging between us. I expected anger, accusations, the same entitlement she'd always shown. Instead, she looked away first. "I'm sorry," she said softly, the words so unexpected I wasn't sure I'd heard correctly. "What?" "I'm sorry," she repeated, meeting my eyes again. "For everything. For how my dad treated you. For how I treated you." I didn't understand then. I do now. I said nothing, unsure what response she wanted or deserved. "After Dad died," she continued, "everything fell apart. Mom couldn't keep up with the bills. I had to drop out, get a job. 3 jobs, actually." She gave a bitter laugh. "Turns out the real world isn't as easy as I thought it would be." "It rarely is," I agreed neutrally. "Mom talks about you sometimes," she said. "About how she failed you. How she wishes she could go back and change everything. She's not the same person she was." "Neither am I said simply. Chloe nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I have to get to work. But, it was good to see you." "Really?" As she turned to leave, I found myself calling after her. "Chloe." She looked back, a question in her eyes. "Tell her." I paused, the words sticking in my throat. "Tell her I got the letter. And the flowers. They weren't meant to be anonymous." A small smile, genuine and sad. "I will." I watched her go, feeling something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet. But perhaps the beginning of a thaw in the ice I build around that part of my heart. Time doesn't heal all wounds. Some cuts go too deep, leave scars too profound to ever fully fade. But maybe, just maybe, time can give us perspective. Can help us see that the people who hurt us are also broken in their own ways. That understanding doesn't require forgetting, and compassion doesn't erase boundaries. I don't know if I'll ever have a relationship with my mother again. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. But I no longer need to carry the weight of her choices. I've built my own life, my own family of friends and loved ones who choose me every day, who would never throw me away when I become inconvenient. And that, more than any revenge or vindication, is the greatest victory of all. Final update. I got married last month. Small ceremony, just close friends and my now spouse's family, who have welcomed me as one of their own. There was a moment, standing at the altar, when I found myself scanning the guests, some small part of me still searching for my mother's face. Old habits die hard, I guess. She wasn't there, of course. I didn't invite her. But for the first time, her absence felt more like acceptance than pain. A recognition that the past is the past, and that I've built something beautiful despite, or perhaps because of, everything that happened. 2 days ago, a package arrived. Inside was a handmade quilt, meticulously crafted, with a note. I saw the wedding announcement in the paper. "Congratulations. I remember you always got cold easily as a child. I thought you might like this for your new home. No strings attached, no expectations. Just a gift from someone who is very proud of the person you've become, even if she had no hand in it. With love and regret, Mom." I ran my hands over the stitches, thinking of the hours it must have taken her, the care put into every seam. It was the first gift she had given me in years that asked nothing in return. I still haven't called her. I'm not sure I ever will. But the quilt is on our bed now, and sometimes, when I wrap it around myself on cold mornings, I allow myself to remember the mother she was before Robert, before everything went wrong. The mother who worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over my head. The mother who taught me resilience, even if the lesson came in ways she never intended. Some people say that family is everything, that blood is thicker than water, that forgiveness is mandatory rather than earned. I disagree. Family is what we make it. True family doesn't discard you when you become inconvenient. True family stands by you, supports you, loves you unconditionally. I have that now, not with the people who share my DNA, but with the people who share my life, my values, my heart. And that's more than enough. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that we get to choose who we become, regardless of what happens to us. We get to decide whether to perpetuate the cycles of hurt we've experienced or to break them. We get to determine our own worth, rather than accepting the value others place on us. 3 years ago, I was a frightened teenager with nowhere to go and no one to rely on. Today, I am whole, happy, surrounded by people who choose me every day, as I choose them. If that's not success, if that's not victory, I don't know what is. As for my mother, Chloe, and the ghost of Robert that still haunts them, I wish them peace. Not because they deserve it, but because carrying anger serves no purpose except to keep us tethered to the past. And my future is too bright to keep looking backward.